Okay, welcome to Under Construction with Chadwicks. We have a brilliant podcast for you today. We're looking at the road to recovery. Pat, an unbelievable, interesting topic. A conversation that we probably don't talk enough as Irish people, and especially with people that would listen to us on the trade. Irish males, I feel, from being in a dressing room, I think it's an awful lot like a construction site. Maybe this is an area we don't talk an awful lot about.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we've spoken to the Irish Prison Service about the wonderful rehabilitation programmes they have in place, some of them relating to construction, so we thought it would be good to shine a light on some of the stories of rehabilitation. And to do so, we have Pennie and Brian O'Sullivan join us today to discuss the topic. So, gentlemen, you're very welcome.
Lads, thanks a million for joining us. Typical when it comes to Pat booking two Brians, you know what I mean? Just to make it so easy.
A little bit harder.
Yeah, exactly.
So the only conversation I have is one's from Cork. So
well, from this
Cork
moment
team.
on, Brian O'Sullivan, you might be known as Sully, just purely because we've the Cork connection, and I think we can go there, fella.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Lads, I suppose, obviously, we're delighted to have you along. It's a tough topic to talk about, but with your vast experience, we'd look to get into chatting of all things recovery and more so the road to recovery. But to kick us off, just maybe a little bit of an introduction in terms of your trade in the game. Brian O'Sullivan, I know you're from a family, is that right, in scaffolding? It's the big area of expertise.
No, believe it or not.
I made a langer on myself straight away, Brian.
That's alright. No, my grandfather was a painter for years in Cork Airport. He was a head painter. My father was a painter. I followed my father painting. I just didn't like it. Most boring job in the world. I'm scaffolding out the last 12 months. Labourer for scaffolders. Tough job.
Yeah, I could imagine. What about you, Brian Pennie? Is there family experience on the trade?
There's not. My dad was a jack of all trades. God, he worked with everything: coalman, milkman, God, collecting empty bottles out of pubs and pulling the caps off. And I done a little bit of all those jobs as well. But all my friends and my brothers and all, big into the trades. My brother's a plumber, my mates would be sparks, plumbers, plasterers. So a lot of the people in my orbit basically would be big time into the trades.
Brian, do you want to give us a bit? But Brian Pennie, you want to give us a bit of the history yourself then in relation to, your life, I suppose, journey to get us into here?
Yeah, I think one of the important aspects of addiction is it's not so much. A lot of people think the drinking or the drugging is the problem, and that's never the problem. That's just a symptom of the problem. So there's always something underlying it. And I suffered with a lot of trauma as an infant, actually, as a baby, and sort of childhood trauma. And I sort of had a very anxious mindset. I was always worrying, always fearful, very, very anxious as a kid. And it's no surprise to me that when I did find drugs, it sort of gave me that sense of relief. So I started doing drugs at about 13, 14 years of age. When I was 16, I found heroin for the first time, and it was like I found heaven on earth. It relieved those inner demons. It relieved that anxiety. I was tormented by my mind and consumed by anxiety, just bodily anxiety. And it just took all of that away. And it took me about 2 years before I was fully addicted. But I had a panic attack at about, I think it was about 19, 20 years of age, and a full-blown panic attack. And I was chronically addicted to heroin, literally for the next 15 years. So it took me into some very, very, very dark places. And I was very lucky that when I was 35, I had a near-death experience that just sort of gave me a shift in perspective. It gave me a different lens to look at the world. And I just started becoming addicted, you could say, to a different kind of a thing, like health, education, learning about the human mind. And I don't like to say addiction, maybe it's an obsession more in a way. I'm really interested in that, and I'm very grateful because it sort of just pulled me in a completely other direction. And I went on to do a PhD in neuroscience in Trinity College, but all with the goal of exploring addiction to an extent, but really the underlying predictors, the underlying mechanisms that drive people towards addiction. So that's really where my journey landed me in the end.
When you were coming on up, you started 13, 14, 15, 16. When you were coming into working age, 18, 19, 20, what were you doing then? Like, how did you, I suppose, service the addiction?
Yeah, it was always, so I was a functional addict through much of that time, and I think that's very apt for today's conversation because people have this idea of the stereotypical addict, and that's not the truth. Ironically, I worked in the graphics industry for a printing company designing methadone labels and anti-anxiety medication for Big Pharma. Yeah, swear to God. So I'd be sitting there dying for drugs, dying from anxiety on the inside, designing the actual medication I was looking to get.
No way.
Crazy stuff. But what I found was when I found recovery, so I was functional for so much of my addiction, but when I found recovery, I went back doing research in the treatment centre or in the clinic where I was an addict for so long. And it's only had to come to me just now, an awful lot of tradespeople will be coming in and getting their methadone. Like, it's just other people as well, but it's in the industry. It's a functional addiction. Even heroin can be a functional addiction. It's not just alcohol. That's something that people have to recognise.
Yeah. Amazing. And Brian O'Sullivan, for you?
Yeah, my first experience with drugs was a young age. Started out with cannabis, a little bit of drink. But what I found was when I was around 14, 15, I took my first ecstasy tablet at a teenage disco. And I'll never ever forget the feeling it gave me. It was just this warm, loving, hugging feeling I got off it, you know. It took away everything that was going on for me as a child. I mean, everything, just took it away instantly. And that feeling, even when I speak about it, I still get that same feeling. Just warm blood rushing straight up through the body. And I suppose it just gave me something I was lacking and missing for a long time. And I remember every weekend after I took that first one, I kept chasing that feeling. You know, going back to the teenage discos, instead of 1 week, getting one week, the week after I get 2, you know, and it progressed, you know, until I got a bit older and I got out of it. But that went on for a good 2 years, you know. And first you go out on a Friday night to the disco, you wouldn't come home on the Friday night, then you'd stay out, be out doing it Saturday night. Then in a matter of time, it start going to 3 days of the weekend, you know. Then before you know it, like, it's coming to a Monday and you have to be home for school and you're in bits from home, you know. And that was where my addiction started. I suppose for me, heavier drugs. I was in prison when I was 18, you know, and it was coming near the end of my sentence. I was introduced to heroin in Cork prison. That was in 2006, 2007, you know, and in Cork at that time, heroin was unheard of. You kind of had to go to Dublin. That's where it was, you know. And I suppose when I got introduced to that in there, by the time I got out from my sentence, you know, I kind of got the taste for it and I got the lip for it. And, you know, when you want something, you'll find it, you know. And I suppose for me, that's where my addiction started, and that's when it got heavy.
And Brian, were you working at the time? Did you transition into work or from school?
Yeah,
or did that work for you?
when I left school, say 15, 16, I went on working doing brick paving, you know. I was doing that for a few years, you know, with a family member, and like Brian says there, you know, I was functioning at the time, you know. I'd get my week's wages, and at the weekend I'd go on taking cocaine with the lads and drinking cans, and throughout the week then, you know, the prescription medication came into it because I couldn't cope with myself, you know. I need something to bring me back down off the high I was on. I know that trickle out through the week, and I suppose it just always, with me personally, my addiction can always progress, you know. Like if I have enough of something, one thing, I'd go to another drug, you know, and it just always escalated to another level, you know.
Brian said earlier on, it was maybe escaping from being socially anxious. For you, did you find that?
Oh, definitely. For me, like, when I'm sure you can relate with prescription medication, that gave me something confident, you know, and I could speak to anyone. I could think clearly to an extent, you know. I had way more confidence within myself. My self-esteem was low, you see, so it boosted me up in all them areas, you know.
And then coming out of prison, you know, what sort of, I suppose, pathway did you have then, or what could you have to bring you, I suppose, call it straight and narrow? What sort of, you know, what was there for you?
When you have criminal convictions, previous convictions, and if you're applying for certain jobs, say online or be it on a CV, the first thing they asking you years ago was, have you criminal history, you know, previous? And straight away, if you put down, I do, you may forget about getting that job. It's not happening, like, you know. So obviously you do what you do and you say you'd none. But you know, they always find out, like, and I've lost jobs over it, and I couldn't keep jobs down because of, you know, I come in dying sick on a Monday morning, the boss would know, you know, you might miss Tuesday or Wednesday. It was no good.
Brian, sorry, but it's such a big thing. Like, I don't know anyone else that's been in prison. You know what I mean? Can you tell us about that time? Can you tell us about the first day, the feelings all around it? Like, I couldn't imagine it.
I remember I was only a young lad. It was only, like I said, I was only turning 18, and I remember going up to Cork prison, and they put me into a 6-man cell, you know, a holding cell for the night. And I remember I went into the cell and we had 5 big burly men inside there. And there I am, the top bunk in the corner of the bunk. I was shitting it. I'm telling you that now. I was so scared. I was afraid. I actually was fearing for my life, you know, in myself. And I remember the lads, they were all playing cards and they were bashing each other's knuckles with cards, you know, just having the crack inside the cell. But I was up behind my pillow, sitting on the bunk, afraid of my life, you know, and just waiting for the night to pass so I could get out of that cell and be brought to a different part of the prison.
Of course, you were so young.
Yeah, but in saying that, then you put on this persona. You know, you puff out your chest, you puff out your arm, make yourself out to be bigger than what you are. But inside I was just a scared little 18-year-old boy, you know, in a man's prison, you know. That was my first feeling of it, you know.
But the environment as well, like the environment results in you having to act that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you can't show vulnerability in a place
no,
like
you
that.
you can't, and you can't in any aspect of life, really. If you're in that world of addiction and around people in similar situations, you have to put on this persona. And you know, I'm not the small man here. I can look after myself. You know, that's just the way it was. You know,
It's like our relationship here.
Yeah.
I'm the small man, but I can look after myself against this fella, you know.
But Brian, I don't mean to be nosy, but can you give us a day in the life? Like, what goes on in prison, you know?
I suppose, you know, you get up in the morning, you get your breakfast, you know, you go back to your cell, you have your bit of breakfast, your cell door would open at maybe 9:30, clean out your cell, go to the yard at 10 o'clock, 10 till 12, come back in, get your dinner, into your cell. Now during that time of 10 to 12, you have options of going to school, the gym, or you have the option of going out to the recreation in the yard and not doing any of the school or gym. You know, it's up to yourself. Locked up again from 12 to 2. Then you're out at 2 till 4 again, and then you're out at 4 till 5:30, 6 o'clock maybe, and then you're locked in there for the night.
You're looking fit. You must have been in the gym a bit then.
I don't know about that. That's scaffolding enough, yeah.
Yeah, sure. But there is programs within the prison service that can, you know, help you continue your trade, or if you went in at that point to continue with it.
Yeah, certain trades. I know, like, I mean, on a personal level, I used to do carpentry, you know, when I was in prison, you know, over the woodwork class, and there's arts and crafts and stuff like that. I know in some prisons there is some programs, but like, I haven't been to prison now in 5 or 6 years, so that might have all changed, you know.
Brian, I don't want to tap over the point that you just said, but there was a critical moment in your life. You said, and you're nearly thankful to that moment. It seems like in coming so close to losing it all, it brought you back to where you'd like to be.
Yeah, I am so grateful for that moment, and it's like what I've learned in my life is that all of the greatest challenges I've had have been is where the growth happened, and that was the biggest growth right there. And I often say that moment nearly broke me. So what actually happened was I tried to do a home detox at home on my own against medical advice, because the detox centre couldn't take me in for 8 weeks, and I had what's called a grand mal convulsive seizure. So it's when every neuron in your brain literally fires at the exact same time. And I'd actually bit into my tongue and nearly split it down the middle. Blood everywhere, rushed to hospital. And I remember just being in the hospital, an absolute shell of a human being, emotionally, mentally and physically broken. And at one stage I was looking at this fire extinguisher that was hanging on the wall, and I was I sort of leaned up off the trolley, my legs dangling off the side, and I was staring at this thing on the wall. And I didn't really know what it was. It was like, I know I should know what that is, but what's going on here? And I was filled with this really weird sense of dread, as if something is really wrong here. And I had this realisation, your brain damage, you've destroyed your brain. It was like my verbal world wasn't working. I couldn't cognitively link anything together. And I remember just waiting to be like overwhelmed by panic attacks, which I suffered with all my life. And I remember just saying to myself, I give up. I can't fight this anymore. I'm done. And I lay back down on the trolley, and what I've realised in retrospect, like a sense of peace came over me instead of being overwhelmed. And what I realised in retrospect, that was the first time in my life that I stopped fighting my own mind. I stopped fighting anxiety, the hole in the soul that was missing. I was always trying to escape this inner pain, trying to fight it, push against it. And I just let go. It was like I surrendered. I didn't have that language at the time. And once I surrendered, I believe that was the moment. I let it was a chink in the armour to sort of give myself another way of looking at the world. And I'm so grateful for that moment, because that really was the catalyst for everything else.
They say there's a book in all of us, and you've written a book yourself.
I have, but the book is called Bonus Time. Yeah. So I believe I was given a second chance at life. I'm living on bonus time, and that right there was the very start of bonus time for me. And I just take chance now. I don't want to regret anything, so I go out, give things a shot, give things a try, and that's what the book's about.
I'm listening to it at the moment. I got 8 chapters into it. It's heavy though, Brian, isn't it? Like an outstanding book, and I'm looking forward to finishing it. But I needed to take, like, what you've gone through in your life is absolutely incredible. Both of you, absolutely amazing. You've documented it in bonus time.
Yeah, it's really heavy, and I think the hard thing to capture is basically is the relentlessness of it. I think that's something I tried to get across in the book, but it's like Groundhog Day. It's a relentless slog. And addiction is hard in so many ways. You have to scheme, you have to wake up, you're addicted, you're going to be very, very sick and ill emotionally and physically if you don't get your drugs. You never have enough money because, as Brian says several times, like, you always want more. My PhD was looking at the relationship between wanting more and negative emotions, the pain we have. So you're trying to fill like a hole in your soul, chasing what's called a hungry ghost that you can't fill. It's like a thirst that you can't quench, and you never fill it. And it's that relentless slog that is actually, you're trying to get the drug to make you feel better, when in the long run the drug is making you worse and you can't see it. That's the challenge.
The bit in the book that I couldn't believe was the drug nearly talking to you, like heroin chatting to you and leaving you know, like, I've got you, don't worry, you're okay with me, when you know all that now.
Yeah, it was like a temptress, you know, that way. It was always like, I remember that the very first time I'd done it, it was like, where have you been all of my life? And it was like whispering to me, I look after you, keep me close, and I look after you. And I was just gone from that very moment, because I didn't, my very first time doing heroin, it was like 2 years before I was chronically addicted and doing it on an everyday basis. But it had me from that moment. And like Brian just said, it was basically waiting for the next week. Then it turned to 2 days a week, then 3 days a week. But it was always speaking to you. The drug always speaks to you through your own voice, in a way, that inner kind of dialogue. But it's always calling you, whispering to you all the time.
Just on that, you both were functional at the time, you know what I mean, able to get out and work and do different things. How did it affect friends, family, people that were close? How were you able to nearly hide this or keep it away from people, or worry?
I don't think you can ever hide it. You think in your own head that you're hiding it, and you're doing a great job hiding it, but everyone knows. Some people, it's just like the elephant in the room, you know, especially with your own family. They don't want to talk about it, but that only lasts so long, you know. Relationships start to break down within the family, you know. The trust is gone, because with addiction comes, you know, distrust and dishonesty, and, you know, things that go missing to feed your habit, and all these relationships break down, and you start getting distant from your family, and like myself on a personal level, you know, I got put out of my family home because of my using and my addiction, and rightly so, you know. I wouldn't have it in my home today.
But Brian, and let's be honest, I think Brian's right. We all know about it. It's probably something we don't talk about as much. So then there's a stigma about it, isn't there, in Irish society, that we nearly mask over it because we don't want to grab the nettle.
Yeah, there's a funny thing, and that's what Brian mentioned there. Like, people call addicts liars, but like by default, if you're in addiction, you have to lie. Like, I couldn't say to me, man, I'm just going up to do a bag of smack, be down 20 minutes. Like, I have to lie. I have to lie, and you have to lie to people to protect your addiction. And your addiction is protecting that inner pain. So you have to lie to stop yourself feeling pain, because otherwise it's like pulling your coping mechanism away from you. So you've got to lie. So I think when it comes to the stigma in society, it's like the lying junkie, like, you know, that way. These are the words that they give, but by default, they all go together. You've got to lie to keep yourself in addiction. And I think you need money to get yourself an addiction. You can't hold down a job. Very difficult to hold down a job in addiction. So you're going to probably rob things. For me, I needed more drugs to fund me habit. So I used to rob little things out of shops. I don't know why I even done that. It wasn't to make money. It was just a weird thing that was going on in that twisted addiction mind. But I started selling drugs to fund me habit because my job wasn't giving me enough money. So And people often think of, bleeding the drug dealers and stuff like that. And I was only talking about this recently. Like, people think that, like, there's a drug dealer and an addict. But the reality is that the drug dealer is the addict and the addict is the drug dealer. It's really on a spectrum. Like, one day, if I come across €200, I'm not going to buy 200, or I'm not going to buy 10, 20 bags. I'm probably going to buy a bigger bag, sell a few to give me more. So one week I could be selling to somebody and the next week I could be buying off them. So it's sort of interactive that way as well. So I think the stigma is all wrapped around all of the other behaviours that are wrapped up in the process of trying to heal your pain. And that's really what you're trying to do, but that's sort of hidden from people.
Brian, a bit I was massively interested in the book where you were saying you would try to get a hold of drugs, but some other addicts wouldn't sell it to you or didn't want you to go down that path. There was nearly a respect within it to try to keep others out and not go down this road that so many have travelled.
Yeah, I'm actually nearly getting a bit emotional there thinking of that. So the guy I'm talking about, actually I won't say any names or anything like that, but he had passed away last year. And he basically had my back. Like, he was in the depths of addiction himself, but even though it would benefit him, he wouldn't sell to me or give to me. He was looking out for me within that as well. And unfortunately, it took his life last year.
Brian, you went to recovery facility in Carlow. Can you give us a bit of insight in that and how you made it down there? What brought you to that point?
I suppose for me, you know, my rock bottom, you know, I share this a lot in meetings and so on. So, you know, I didn't want to live no more. My drug addiction got so bad and everything just went wrong for me in life. You know, I lost some family members, and so I tried to, you know, take my own life, and I failed, which is a good thing, obviously, because I'm here today to talk about it. You know, but I remember being in the hospital, you know, and I had all these tubes in me, and I woke up out of a coma, you know, and I remember this now when my family were around the bed, and the first thing I could do was to get the tubes out and all this carry on, and subconsciously I knew I had a bag in my pocket, my jeans pocket. I got that, went out to the bathroom in A&E, used, came back up. My mother was there looking at me like, what the fuck? And I'm saying, what are you crying for? What's going on? They're like, you were practically dead in the bed, and you're asking us what's going on. And for me that was rock bottom there, you know. And with the help of Cork Alliance, I got a place in treatment in Francis Farm, you know, and I went up there 3.5 years ago. And
can you tell us a bit about Francis Farm and what it is? And
it's a drug rehabilitation centre up in Carlow. Fantastic place. I'd highly recommend it to anybody. You know, I've tried treatment centres before, and they didn't do it for me. This place did. You know, whether it was something myself that I wasn't ready beforehand, possibly, but this place, you know, it did it. I went in and I put in 110% into it. You know, intense one-on-one counselling, group therapies. You know, you're working in a farm environment, so you're out every day working in the farm, and it was fantastic. You know.
Brian, you said you tried to do something on your own. Like, is that facility or even is the programs around helping people so important? Can you do it on your own, or do you need the support from others?
You massively need the support from others. So I couldn't get into a detox for 8 weeks, a benzo detox to get off benzos. And I actually didn't think I'd be alive in 8 weeks. Something was telling me I was getting off benzos so I could get into an opiate detox. That was the goal of getting off the benzos. Where I was going, they wouldn't take me in unless I was benzo free. I drug free except for methadone actually. So funnily enough for me, I needed that near death experience to break me. And I often wonder that if I went just to detox and treatment without having that experience, would I have gotten clean? I don't know where I'd be today. But that was my journey. I had that near-death experience that sort of broke me. Then when I went to the detox to get off heroin, that was where I was learning about psychology, psychotherapy, meditation, Eastern philosophy. I came across all of these and it really lit the fire in my belly for education. Like, I still thought I was brain damaged. And I remember there's a woman, Professor Johanna Ivers, came into the detox asking people that were on long-term methadone use to be part of a brain study. And she came in and she said it to me, to be part of the brain study, and she was asking me a few questions, like psychometric questions about the scan and what you were going to do. And I was like, I was sort of preempting the next question, and she turned around to me and she says, God, you have a very sharp mind. And I was like, God, maybe I'm not brain damaged. And I says, maybe I can go to college. And it turns out 4 years later, Johanna asked me to teach the neuroscience of addiction in Trinity College. So it was a lovely full circular moment there. But I needed all of those little triggers that helped me. I needed so much of what I got in detox. Treatment for me was a different animal. Like, you go to detox and then you go to treatment. I think Francis's Farm, they combine it.
That's what I did. I did the detox first and then the rehabilitation side of it.
Yeah. And I think it's different things for different people. For me, it was the shift in perspective and this drive for learning. That was the push for me. I didn't need treatment as much. Most people need treatment. I was giving myself my own treatment. I still had a lot of healing to do because I burnt a lot of bridges with my family. I had a big preference. I cut off my emotions for so long with drugs. When I was getting my emotions back, I had a big preference for happy emotions, and I wasn't really refusing to feel the pain of what I caused my family and other people. So it took me nearly a few years. I don't know, there was something protecting me on the inside. Don't feel that yet. And it was only when I was writing my book and I felt the depth of the pain I caused my family that I was able to sort of feel that massively. Like, it knocked me for a week where I could barely move for a week. But that was my journey. And I was like, recovery, other people are imperative for the journey, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's the supports of other people in recovery. It's absolutely imperative. There's a great line out there: sobriety is not the opposite of addiction, connection is. And I think that says a lot about the support you need.
Brian, you do a good bit of work with Cork Alliance. Can you give us a bit of insight into that and what your involvement is?
Yeah, I was, I suppose Cork Alliance, you have to be a prisoner in Cork prison or a Cork lad in another prison. And
it's all about Cork.
It's all about Cork with them. And you know, they offer you support on release from prison. You know, if you can get released early through a program with them. You have to sign on every week, turn up to Cork Alliance every week. And they basically give you the support and the help you need to get back on your feet. And like that, now I was introduced to them a good few years ago, and I jumped on it. And ever since, you know, I've been great friends with them inside there.
So do you do talks and?
Up till recently, I was a client of Cork Alliance. I know I work alongside Sheila Connolly below, and I go up to Portlaoise Prison once a month to their training college, and it's the recruit prison officers. Do a seminar with them. I'm actually going up now this Friday. And it's basically just, you know, I just go up and I share my story with them, 2 hour long story, and it's just trying to change, I suppose, how, like, again, the stigma, you know, the prisoners and the prison officers, we're all the same, you know, we're all human beings, like, and it's just trying to change the stigma, like, of who the officers see when they go in there. They might see a lad in there that's, you know, he might be in a good place, but, you know, deep down he's just an ordinary lad that had some issues, and he might have addiction issues, you know. I'm just trying to see past that, and, you know.
It's amazing you both talk so clearly about those moments that everyone else fears, but you make it sound like it was the best moments of your life, that moment where you surrender a little bit. How has that helped you find a new respect for life?
For me, this is a crazy thing to say, and I probably regret it if I went back to that moment, but if I could go back to any moment in my life, it would be while I was in detox, in the days coming off heroin. Like, I was physically in a seriously bad way, But it was like this, just waking up to life again. I was coming across ideas and concepts, and there was just a different whisper than that heroin whisper. It was like, you might have a life again. I was blown away by this. How can I have a life again after everything I've been through? And that moment was just like, was breathtaking. Like, it really was. I definitely, that would be, it was just such an important and pivotal moment, and I'm just so grateful for those times.
Yeah, solely for you, because that sounds like, just being from a family member, sounds like the worst moment you could ever imagine having with your family. But yet, for you, it was a defining moment in your life.
Like that. No, it was the bottom of the barrel. Like, and I had two options. I was either keep going and go back to prison, or keep going and die. That was the two options I had, you know, or get myself sorted and go drive it on, you know. And that's what I chose to do. I had enough of pain. I had enough of misery. I was so lonely, you know. There was times I was just on my own. I had nobody else, you know. And I just had enough. It was like I said, it was either that now or take my own life. That's where my life was going. So, you know, when I like Brian says, you know, when I was in detox, and the drugs were in my system fully, you know, it was like I kind of got this moment. What are you doing with yourself? You know, you've so much to give, so much potential, you know. And I just made the decision then to, whatever it takes, just to give it one day at a time, you know. And that one day at a time then turned into a week at a time, a month at a time, a year at a time, and it gets easier, you know. It genuinely gets easier. No, don't get me wrong, we all have our days, but never would I want to go back to where I was, you know.
They're saying recently there's a CIF study that the trades are not immune to the issues relating to drugs and alcohol. As it is a male-dominated industry, the common solution might be to talk about it, but as you know, we're all men, we don't like talking. What advice would you give to people in the trades, you know, who feel they need help, who are in a position that you guys were potentially in back in the time?
I think one of the biggest challenges, like, is reaching out within the workplace. It's going to be very, very difficult, especially in that male-dominated environment, and even in a sport-dominated environment. It's very hard with the energy of that environment. It makes it very, very difficult. But just reach out to somebody, and what I'd always say is, like, take baby steps. Maybe if you're like, the thoughts of actually telling the truth is so difficult, of saying it to someone else is so hard, maybe just write it down on a piece of paper and don't tell anyone just yet. Take baby steps and just play with the idea of actually doing it. Or even just go to a therapist, go to like a drug facility and talk to get an analysis of them. Just sort of dip your toes in the water just to get a feel for it, so it's not all overwhelming at the same time. But it's because it's about getting honest with yourself at the next day, at the end of the day. Like, one of the things that I often talk about, and I think we're all experts in self-deception. I think people with addiction issues are black belts in self-deception. But it's being honest with yourself. That is the key piece. And it's very hard to see your own blind spots. Like, one of the biggest core aspects of addiction is denial. You're in denial about your own addiction. And I had a friend of mine, he's in the trades game, in the building game. And when I got clean, he was chatting to me. He had a cocaine problem. I would imagine alcohol and cocaine would be the bigger challenges in that arena. And I was saying, like, you can't be doing coke on a Monday and a Tuesday evening, like, that's mental. And he says, everyone's at it. And I says, everyone is not at it. They're not at it. They're really not. Now, he's since gone on to lose his job, lose his partner, lose everything he had good in his life. And he one time he said to someone else that knows me, he says, is Brian still nuts, or is he back to normal? Meaning, is Brian still nuts, sober and talking the way he's talking, or is he back to normal, back in addiction? So that was the self-deception. That was the aspect of that. So you have to see reality for what it is. So it's waking up to that. So even write out on a page how we are feeling, journaling, go and talk to someone if you can. But baby steps. Don't go. You don't have to go all in. Just take a little nudge in the right direction.
Right now.
Yeah. I think just, you know, just approach someone. Talk to them. Just tell someone what's going on for you, you know. Like, we do have this thing where, especially us men, like, where we think we can bottle everything up and it's going to go away. In fact, it won't go away, it'll get worse. You know, just reach out. There's plenty of help out there. You know, even like in regard to myself, like going to a meeting, you know, I often see lads there and they're struggling. I say, no, come on to a meeting there, you never know. You don't have to stay, you can leave, come down, have a listen. And it works for some people, you know. So just make yourself vulnerable, put yourself out there. It's okay not to be okay. You know, genuinely, it's okay. And you know, because we're big grown arse men, like we think we can show that we're vulnerable. It's okay to do it, you know, and the rewards are out there then if you open yourself up to someone. The help is there, there's plenty of services there, you know. And the big thing is like, you know, do you know what the biggest killer in the construction industry is? Last year, suicide. Do you believe that now? And I didn't know that till we had a toolbox talk a few weeks ago with the Lighthouse Foundation, is it? And we were all saying falls or off heights or something, you know, suicide. It's because people are taking on, they have a lot of money worries, relationship problems, just stress alone from work and everything else. And they, instead of talking about it, they take it home with them and it manifests inside them, and the problem gets a whole lot bigger instead of getting the problem smaller, you know. Just by speaking about it takes half the sting out of it, you know.
Just one for me there, because I've been in dressing rooms as well, and you've had players that have struggled on different things, but I wouldn't have ever felt like that. But looking back at it, I would feel I could have been better for those lads, a better listener, a better teammate, a better friend. For me, I know it's an excuse. I didn't kind of look out for it. You know, if you're in a good position where you can throw a hand back for someone else, what should you be looking out for there? What are the kind of conversations you can have?
I think one of there's two words that Brian really talked about. They're the most important words. One of them is loneliness, and one of them is vulnerability. So I think if someone, like, I think you'd nearly see it in someone's face. If someone's lonely, if someone's alone, like even alone with their own thoughts, you can be in a room full of people and still be utterly alone. So it's nearly just asking people, how are you, and letting you know, here, how are you doing all right? If you feel that, and just letting you know, if you ever want to talk, let me know, I'm here, and being there for them.
And some people, a lot of people isolate themselves, you know. They take themselves away from the problem. Or if I come away, it's going to go away. It doesn't go away, you know. And for me, I always remember, you know, when I was using cocaine, you would find yourself, you know, Saturday night, Sunday morning, the birds are whistling outside the window. You know, you have nothing left. Your drugs are dumped in there, nothing, and you're just sitting in a room on your own. And let me tell you, when you're sitting there, your mind is going to dark places, and I'm sure you can relate to that, couldn't you? Yeah. And it's not somewhere you want to be.
To be fair, the most inspiring part for the whole conversation for me is that the fact you guys have been at rock bottom and you've come back from the depths of depression and, you know, drug abuse, and you've come out the other side. I mean, anyone listening to this who's gone through any sort of addiction, it's very inspiring. So fair play to both. Can I ask you, in relation to your relaxing time now, like, do you into sports, football, hurling, rugby? It must be, you couldn't be into rugby because it's the worst sport in the world. Obviously hurling and football, but what do you do to downtime then? I know, Brian, you're mad into the education piece, VH, but do you give yourselves a bit of time? What do you do like now to relax?
The education, I love reading. That's definitely one of me things. I love exercise. I think exercise will cut the head off so much. Like, if I could give, like, if exercise was a drug, we'd say it's too good to be true. The mechanisms and the science behind exercise, we know it's really important, but the science is 10 times more powerful than what we actually realise right now. It's going to be the thing of the future for so many things. So exercise is huge for me, and fitness and health. But it's just like, and I need to get better at this myself. You're not going to spend, if you have 24 hours, another 24 hours to live, you're not going to ask, can you do it exercise and can you do it in work? And you read another book for another 24 hours if you are given that. I'd be spending time with loved ones. So it's connecting with the people in your lives, and that's the big thing for me. I'm going to try to create more white space for that. I'm going to put it in my diary to create white space to spend time with loved ones, because I think that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
Brian?
Yeah, for me, fishing. I love fishing. I go out every weekend. There's some evenings after work, I go across to the river there and I cast for an hour or two, and that does it for me. I keep saying I'm going back to the gym training, but I genuinely don't need it with the work I'm doing at the minute.
Scaffolders don't do hard work now. Come on, we've moved from steel. We've moved from steel to aluminium, so it's as light now.
We still use steel, all steel. It's no joke throwing them 21 tubes.
We might bring Donncha out for a couple of weeks. He's not training anymore either, so
I can keep up. Lads, are you proud of yourselves? Like for the road you've come, you know what I mean? From where you were to sitting here having this chat, you know what I mean? Inspiring others, leaving people know that there are dark times, but you can get through it, and being examples. Are you proud of yourselves?
I'm proud of myself, yeah. I'm sure you are, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely.
I often think back, like somebody I often chatting to people and whatnot, and I don't think I'd be here unless I went through what I went through. Do you get me? I wouldn't change. Well, obviously change some things, but what I went through made me the person I am today. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
100%.
It sounds weird enough, like why would you want to go through all that to get where you are, but sometimes that's just how life pans out, isn't it?
I think society need people like you, Brian, two Brians, because we won't know otherwise, that you can go rock and then come back up from the top.
Yeah, I think if I didn't go through addiction, I don't think I would be as proud of myself today than I am of where I am now, which is a weird thing to say. I just think there was a lot of growth within the pain, and I do think there is a lot of growth within the pain. But one thing as well, and I get that from your story as well, Brian, there's an incredible gratitude. Like, it was like a roller coaster came along and I jumped on the roller coaster and it pulled me along. That's what recovery's been like for me. But there's been a lot of hard work within that as well. And I think it's back to the awareness piece again. Like, I'm doing a bit of work in schools. Like, I don't work directly with people in addiction, and I haven't got the expertise for starters, but it's a graft because it's so hard to change minds of people that are deep in addiction. But I do a little bit of work with kids now as well, sort of trying to give them the toolbox. Like, I sort of developed my own personal toolbox. I call it my program for life. I deliver it to corporates and stuff like that, do keynotes, but I'm trying to refine that toolbox, and I'm working with Rugby Players Ireland actually at the moment, Tackle Your Feelings program, as part of that, and just going into schools and giving kids the sort of the tools that I needed when I was younger, so they don't have to go down that road. Because as good as glad as I am of being on that journey, I was going to say 9 out of 10, probably 99 out of 100 people don't make it, they die. My best mate is locked up in the joy right now. He doesn't have a rock bottom, so it's helping people to avoid that pain. That's where it's really at for me.
We've looked at it from your point of view and people on sites. What about employers? What do you feel they could do? Because we're good for putting programs in place. It's great to hear you're doing a bit of work like that, Brian, but what else could employers be doing to just push away from the stigma of it and actually address?
Like, in regards to my own employer, Arlington Scaffolding, like, they're fully aware of my past, and that I got some criminal convictions and I've been through prison, and they're very supportive, and they're very supportive of me being here today, and they're giving me time off on Friday as well to go to Portlaoise. They understand what I'm doing, and they respect it, and I suppose, like, in regard to especially lads with criminal convictions and trying to get work, I know there's a big thing going on at the moment, like where Apple Computer and there's another couple of big companies I think involved are taking on people with criminal convictions. Employers these days, they're a lot more aware of it, I think, and I think there should be a little bit more leeway, and if offer support to lads who are struggling, that look, I know what's going on, or maybe reach out to them and say, look, is everything okay? Is that I can help you with? Maybe put them in touch with services or something, That would be my advice to any employer out there that has someone who is having issues.
Yeah, definitely. That's really critical, and from that perspective, I love that from working in the environment. So the employers have to be just more aware, more compassionate to people, because it's out there. But I think one of the challenges as well, and it's not just construction companies, it's all companies really. Like, a lot of them are ticking boxes, and they're bringing people in to do talks, do keynote talks. But I think a little bit more is needed in that. I think whether it's programs, whether it's for specific people as well, it's not necessarily everybody, but it's like a keynote talk can be like inspirational, but it's like a plaster on a bullet hole kind of a thing. Like, it needs to be a little bit deeper than that. So there has to be, whether it's mental health first aid, whether it's getting someone in with it to deliver a specific program for anyone that's interested. And you could do these things online as well. It doesn't have to be in the company where other people can see it if there is that stigma involved around it. but just sort of providing those other supports that go a little bit deeper into that as well. And again, it's not so much, we talk about addiction, but addiction is just a symptom of an underlying problem. Like, no one wants to be addicted. It's running away from something else that's sort of driving some kind of negativity. It's a coping mechanism. It's a way to avoid that. So it's getting to the bottom of the mental health stuff as well, and that will by itself alleviate addiction problems as well.
Well, look, from my perspective, it's been an absolute pleasure to have both of you on the podcast. I think you're an inspiration to anybody listening. I think it's a super story, and I wish you best of luck in the future what you're doing, Donny.
Yeah, thanks so much, lads. Honestly, you should be so proud of yourselves, and taking the time for us today to chat to, like, we've no doubt an awful lot of people listening to the pod just purely to listen to Pat's old hat stories, but there's probably someone listening today that's a bit vulnerable, and you've given them some incredible advice. Thank you so much for taking the time for us.
It's a pleasure, lads. Cheers.
The Under Construction podcast is produced by the Podcast Studios for Chadwicks, Ireland's leading building merchant company, where you can choose from the best products and expert advice to get the job done. Drop into any of your local Chadwicks stores nationwide or visit us online at chadwicks.ie.
If you've been affected by any of the issues discussed in this podcast, you can find support at thesamaritans.org or call 116 123. Construction workers can also contact lighthouseclub.org or call 1800 939 122 or text Hardhat to 50808. Alternatively, contact your local GP. If you are outside the Republic of Ireland, please contact support organisations in your country.